So digital advice is evolving in really two different ways. On the one hand, there's a proliferation of investment options, of fee structures, of the degree of human intervention. But on the other hand, and I find this more interesting personally, is the way structurally the digital advice is being delivered is changing. And I mean that both in terms of how it's delivered, when it's delivered, and where it's delivered. And in part, that is being driven by the classic B2C players. On the other hand, though, it's also being driven by some of the incumbents like the banks, the private banks, the wealth managers. And just to kind of unpack that a little bit, so structurally speaking, you have digital advice robo. This is the classic example. It also includes more interesting examples where you can invest in other things. So think of Sharia compliant investing or investing in expensive automobiles or marine vessels or luxury trainers, if you like. But then also, as you move up the spectrum, you really need something beyond robo. And so we classify another category of digital advice, self-select. I think about this, at least taking a UK example, as the IFA relationship digitized. So where there's a recommendation being made, the vast majority of IFAs don't have discretion, and so the end investor actually is still in the driver's seat on the investment choices. And then you move on from there to digital advice planning. So this is really taking holistic advice, not just investment decisions per se, but also looking at assets and liabilities, income and expenses, looking at your tax situation, look at probabilities of outcomes, cash flow, and digitizing all of that. And finally, the fourth category that we really see is proposaling, digital advice proposal. So this is taking what the classic private bank or wealth manager would have done in a splashy proposal or a suitability report and digitizing it. And so that's sort of how digital advice is coming to proliferate. However, when and where it happens is also changing. So you take the classic website where no one usually delivers this kind of advice, most firms don't. And you can go up from there to what we call a pre-client portal. So this is where there's a user on the portal for the investor, but there's no transactional relationship, and yet there's a value exchange. So you can deliver content because you know who they are, they have a user. You can provide financial planning tools if you like, kind of gamify the experience. And then of course there's a classic investor client portal, and there's an advisor portal. And all of these flavors of digital advice that I mentioned earlier are now starting to be deployed across these, what I would really call the spectrum of a digital relationship. Whatever you're going to do, though, it starts with understanding who you're trying to serve and the digital personas you're trying to serve. Well, to some extent, it's classic marketing 101. So client segmentation, know your audience. But it's gotten a little bit more nuanced than that. I believe strongly in empathy. Empathy, I believe, requires understanding the feelings of another and then reflecting back to that person that you actually understand their feelings. And the way that both of these steps can be done in a digital world to make sure you're on point and understand who you're serving is to first collect information digitally. And those can be done through a public website, your public website. They can be done through a pre-client portal. They can be done through an authenticated investor client portal. And then the way that you can reflect that understanding back once you've organized the data, analyzed the data, derived insights is actually to have personalized content and is to have pictures that you think the investor will be responsive to. And so it's about understanding, but then also reflecting back. And this can be done right in the digital experience. Great digital experience is really three things primarily. It must be involved, it must be intuitive, and it must be individual. And so what I mean by that, an involved or involving site is interesting, it's engaging, it pulls you in. There's some hook there that speaks to you. Intuitive means doesn't need a manual. iPhone doesn't ship with a manual. It's because people understand how to use it intuitively. That's great product design. And then from an individualized standpoint, it means that the delivery of the portal is personalized. It's personalizable by the end user as well. And when you combine these things, you actually get a feeling of greater transparency. And transparency and intuitiveness tends to engender trust. Trust is absolutely the foundation of this industry. Absolutely with a client portal, or some call it an investor portal. The reason for that is a lot of firms either don't have a portal or don't have a portal they're proud of. So we actually conducted a survey, InvestCloud did, recently, where we interviewed 47 UK investment managers and 1,019 end investors of those managers to feel out what they thought of the industry, what they thought specifically of the digital state of the industry. And 79% of managers said their offering digitally wasn't good enough. So only 21% said it was good enough. So 4 in 5, not good enough. And then on the investor side of things, as we asked them about how do they select a manager, what's important to them, 48% said the digital offering was important to very important. So you've got this nexus of super important and yet not very well done by the manager's own telling. And so that right there speaks to what's going on. That needs to be improved. That can be used as a stepping stone to do things like mobile apps, to have better advisor tools, and then to layer in things like engagement, chat, video chat, secure messaging, as well as better onboarding and ultimately digital advice tools.